We now want to take a look at something known as the Cartesian coordinate system. This system is named after a French mathematician by the name of René Descartes. Now, you've done some graphing before. Previously, you've been asked to graph just real numbers. And the way you did that was by drawing the real number line, which of course is centered at the origin. On the right hand side of this real number line, you have your positive real numbers. We usually draw this number line only showing the integers, but of course in between integers you have, say, fractions, decimals, other rationals, irrationals, etc. On the left hand side you have your negative real numbers, and if you were to ask to graph, say, the real number 3, you would do that just by putting a dot right there at 3 on the real number line. But with the Cartesian coordinate system, what we're learning how to do is graph in 2 dimensions instead of just 1. Now, to graph in 2 dimensions, we need to use 2 real number lines. One is going to be oriented horizontally like it was before, and one is going to be oriented vertically. Normally we call the horizontal axis the X. The vertical axis is called the Y. Of course, it can be labeled differently, and it will be labeled differently in other classes, say like physics, etc. Now, your X-axis is laid off the same way it was before. In other words, positives on the right-hand side, negatives on the left-hand side. Your Y-axis is going to be laid off with positives running upward and negatives running downward. To plot a point in 2 dimensions, we don't need a real number, we need an ordered pair. Our ordered pairs are always going to be in the order X first and Y second. So for example, the ordered pair 2, 1 is located by starting at the origin, moving over to the 2 on the x-axis, because it's always x first. From that, we will go straight up until we're in line with the 1 on the y-axis, and that's your ordered pair 2, 1. Now, since this coordinate system cuts your plane, your flat surface, into 4 pieces, those pieces are called quadrants. Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and finally quadrant 4 are laid off in a counterclockwise fashion. Now, because of the way these ordered pairs work, you can tell what quadrant you're in based upon the sign value of your point. In other words, the point 2, 1, which was here, was in first quadrant because it is a positive value followed by a positive value, meaning over to the right and upward puts you in first quadrant. In second quadrant, to locate a point in that quadrant, you'd have to move left first, which would give you a negative, and then up, which would give you a positive. So any ordered pair that falls in second quadrant is going to have a negative x value and a positive y value. In third quadrant, you move left and then down, which is a negative, followed by a negative. And finally, in fourth quadrant, you move right and then down, which is a positive, followed by a negative. So notice that when you're graphing in the coordinates, in this Cartesian coordinate system, when you're graphing these ordered pairs, that the order matters. It makes a big difference. Alright, we can jump to our calculator and see. If we look at some points on that graph, I have 3 points here. And we hit the trace button, we can see the coordinates of those points. Here we see in third quadrant, negative followed by negative. If we jump over to one of the other quadrants, say we back up to this ordered pair 4, 3 in first quadrant, then the one next to it we see to be a 3, 4. So just getting the 3 and the 4 reversed gives you two totally different points. So again, when we call them ordered pairs, that is because to graph in this system, you have to have a pair of numbers, as in two of them. The order is always x first and y second. In other words, the variable on the horizontal axis first, vertical axis second. And what you need to do after you read about the Cartesian coordinate system is to be able to plot points. Like if they were to give you the ordered pair 5, -2, you would need to know that you have to go over 1, 2, 3 to 4 and to 5 on the x-axis, down until you're in line with the -2 on the y-axis. And that's how you locate that point. So you need to be able to graph points that are given, and given a point, you need to be able to figure out what the coordinates are for that particular point. So if we were to look for a point up here in second quadrant, say it was here, you need to be able to see that that's in line with the -3 on the x. It's in line with a +1 on the y. So that point is the point -3, 1. So again, be able to take an ordered pair, plot it, or to take a point that's already been plotted and find the ordered pair that is associated with it. Now, a couple other technicalities. The origin is still in the middle. But again, it takes two real numbers to plot points now, so the coordinates of your origin are 0, 0. You will be asked, based upon sign values, does a point fall in first, second, third, or fourth quadrant? And we can do that by just observing the sign pattern, positive, positive, negative, negative, etc. One more thing that I want to mention is that when you're graphing, if you have a point that falls on one axis or the other, say the point 3, 0, or the point 0, -2, that point is not considered to be on any of the four quadrants, and you can simply say that that point falls, say, on the positive half of the x-axis or the negative half of the y-axis, and that's a sufficient way to locate the position of that point.